Hi, Gregg Perry, the historic preservationist. Welcome to our third in our series of New Jersey's oldest colonial tavern, the Sign of the Key Tavern. And we do this in celebrating America's 250th anniversary this year in 2026. Um, just a little side note here: we're back at the supper table, but we have a bottle of wine and a glass, and um, talking a little bit about what was served at the tavern as far as beverages. Very rarely, if ever, in these early taverns from the late 17th, early 18th century, no one knew what wine was here. No one knew it. They knew what it was back in the old country in Europe, but not here. Um, but we're going to do a little upgrade here. We're going to jump fast forward. We're going to talk about wines a little bit and kind of a warning about wines and kind of a peeve about wines too, about the uh, the fake bullshit of American commercialism, how they try to jam stuff down the consumers' throats without their safety in mind. There's been several studies out there over a 30-year period now, and I'm going to talk about strictly about American wines. Okay, American, New Zealand, Australian wines like Barefoot, all these wines. The problem is they're using excessive chemicals to kill vegetation and pests. And most civilized countries have a certain level of a certain percentage. I have 2 degrees in science, but I'm not going to give you the technical terms of these chemicals. You can take this further and look it up for yourself. But there's 2 to 3 chemicals um, in these chemicals that are put to kill vegetation and to control pests. They've been linked to Parkinson's in a huge way. So you look it up, um, and you'll find this in the American, Australian, and the New Zealand wines in particular. So there's no regulations on how much can be used. There's no maximum limits by the FDA. I'm not sure we have an FDA anymore as far as chemical use, because just a week ago they're going to start. This stuff has been banned that goes into a Roundup. They're starting to use this again, starting to produce it. It's been banned, certain chemicals, for a number of years now, 35, 40 years, and our government has just gave the okay to put these back in use. The problem is they've been being used in wines, whether it's your local winery in Delaware, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Maine, doesn't matter. Heavy, toxic chemicals. The biggest offender right now, arsenic. You're going to find arsenic at 500 times the local levels that would be allowed if, say, somebody sold you spring water. They gave you spring water in a restaurant, you buy spring water. If it's really spring water, which we don't know, but it's having 500 times the arsenic in a bottle, in a glass of wine. Uh, Hard to conceive. It's off the charts. It goes toward a Parkinson's disease. So look it up. And beyond that, it's not really wine. It's these local wineries. They buy concentrates. They buy the dregs, the bottom of the huge cask, the 500-gallon cask. They buy gallons and gallons of it, and it comes to their quote startup wineries. So these wineries are like a little franchise. You go on the internet and say, "Oh, I think let's open a winery," and you buy a package. You put 3, 4, $500,000 out, and you buy all the fake equipment to start a winery. But what in the end, what do? You go out and you buy the concentrate from California, basically. That's where it comes from. And it's the concentrate that Napa Valley doesn't want. Doesn't want. It's the dregs. And when you get it back, you add sugar, you add color, you add flavors. It's not real wine. That's not the real world. In the real world, wine is an organic process that's created by fermentation, and it creates its own color, its own flavor, its own sec or lack of or sweetness, should be very minimal. Um, it's like going in for soda pop at these wineries, and I think so many Americans are just so enthralled to have this place they can say, "Oh yeah, I spent the afternoon at a local winery," where they're not wineries. Or, and believe me, I spent 3.5 years living in France, and I'm no expert on wine by any imagination. But even I have a tongue that can discern a bottle of Bordeaux, um, a a bottle of Shiraz from Europe, and it's so different from California or from a quote local winery. It is just there's no heaviness in palate. There's no multiple overlapping flavors. So do yourself a favor. Go buy a bottle of French wine, bottle of good Italian wine, um, and try it and compare it, and you'll see what garbage you've been drinking, and you should feel very embarrassed. Now, we have the chief wine taster here on the in the conservation lab. He's coming in, so he does the sniffing. So he thinks the French Bordeaux is a little strong, but nevertheless, seriously, get some European wine, try it, compare it to the California wines, and try it to your local what they call wines, and you'll find out it's not good. Um, but it's all about the pesticides being used, the herbicides being used, and 3 or 4 select chemicals in those that we're actually starting to produce now. And because I have science background, I've been reading for the last 25 years. If you went out and you sprayed 2 or 3 bottles of Roundup in a pump spray, which you can buy, and you got a little breeze coming back at you, those molecules, those aerations of molecules you ingested, 20 years later, 15, they can set something in motion in you to start Parkinson's. So look it up, study it, and just to be aware that there's no regulations on this stuff for the amount of chemicals can be used in American and Australian wines. So, so that's going to be our tip from today from America's oldest tavern. And in America's oldest tavern, back in the beginning, in the late 17th century, they weren't drinking wine at all. They were consuming. Number one, they weren't consuming water, and there's enough. Let's go back. Let's revert a little bit. There's enough information about water, such as Poland Spring has been sued multiple times, thousands of times, that their water, it says spring water, it's coming out of a tap. So they were frequently stopped by the state government of Maine. They stop at their place and they find that they're filling their bottles with tap water. And we'll interject one more thing: the plastic escapade here. Stay away from the plastics if you can. Um, because as I'm sure everyone's aware of the microplastics, you have millions of particles in your body as it is. So just try and reduce that by drinking out of glass, or unfortunately even aluminum. So, but back to what was served in the 18th century, the Sign of the Key Tavern in Woodstown, New Jersey's oldest tavern. You weren't drinking water because it could have had animal runoff from the fields and diseases in the water itself. So not even babies. Everybody drank some form of fermented ale. That was number one, or a hard fermented cider. And really, wine didn't come around to these colonial taverns probably until the 1840s, 1850s. Very late, when you would have 2, 3 story taverns with 20, 30 rooms in the center of places like Philadelphia or Old Burlington City or possibly Wilmington. That's when you would have had wine making its way into the scene as far as a beverage, a possible beverage. But otherwise, it was pretty basic stuff and pretty horrific to drink at that, even that. So, but just imagine the travelers. We just frequently did a piece about traveling in the 18th century. Just imagine if you were traveling in a ship, in a boat over across the Atlantic. We'll call them a ship, 40, 50 feet, and the water goes bad. The water goes bad halfway over. You know, you're hitting headwinds and you're 2 or 3 weeks behind, and there's no more fresh water. And you know, you have to drink wine. You may have to be subjected even to drink urine, to ingest some of your own urine to just to get hydrated, you know, and save it, re-drink it with some of the bad water. So this travel was very, very difficult, and spoiled food for that matter. So anyway, so cheers to New Jersey's oldest tavern. It's 357 years old in 2026, and celebration to America, its 250th anniversary. Gregg Perry, the historic preservationist, signing out. Thanks everyone for viewing.